Hi, I'm Stuart from the Norfolk Honey Company and welcome to Getting Started in Beekeeping. So this is session 8. We've looked at quite a few aspects of beekeeping and the honeybee, and today we're going to continue with our beekeeping year and moving through the season into late summer and early autumn. If this is your first time visiting, please do hit the subscribe button. Take a look at the playlist for Getting Started in Beekeeping. It's designed specifically for new beekeepers or people that are thinking of becoming beekeepers, and it's hopefully giving you a grounding in some of the very basics in beekeeping. If you've already got bees and you're at a more advanced stage of your beekeeping career, then why not take a look at some of the other videos we've got in other playlists. So when we left off last time, the bees were building up in the colony, we were putting supers on, we were having weekly inspections, and all of that continues right through the summer, right through to the end of the honey production season, which for us here in the UK is usually around the end of July. So for me personally, I tend to take all of the honey off the bees at the end of July, which gives them the late summer and into early autumn, and that will give them sufficient time to start putting stores away for the winter. So let's just take another look at how the population of both the adult bees and the brood develops through the summer months and heading towards the early autumn. So as you can see, the colony number has increased to near its maximum. We're in the middle of summer. Adult bees are hitting somewhere around 40 to 60,000 in number, and provided you haven't had any swarming, this is the point at which you're going to get the biggest benefit in return of honey crop from the hard work that you've put in. The brood at this point is also starting to peak and then will gradually start to fall back again, and you can see that in the graph that we've got here. So one of the other things to consider through the summer months is also keeping a good check on the Varroa mite, and obviously keeping a close eye on any disease that might be apparent in the colony, and those need dealing with on a regular basis should they crop up. Don't leave it until the autumn. Take action as soon as you see any problems, and that will minimise the effect of those problems on both your bees' health and also the return of honey that you get. Through the summer, one of the products that we like to use is called Mite Quick Strips. It's a quick, effective treatment for the bees, and it only takes 1 week. And the benefit is that you can use Mite Quick Strips while there's a honey flow on. So if you've got supers that contain honey, you can still use the Mite Quick Strips to treat for Varroa through the summer while they're storing honey. A lot of the treatments you shouldn't use, and really you mustn't use while there's any honey on the beehive. So that kind of restricts the type of product that you can use. And don't forget, you need to use just the authorised treatments here in the UK. It's very easy to try to take a cheap option and not use maybe the slightly more expensive authorised treatments, but at some point you may find that your records are inspected, and it's always nice to be able to say that yes, you've got all of the documentation and that you've been using the authorised treatments. For those of you that want to steer clear of those particular treatments, then you should continue with any integrated pest management systems that you've got in place, and that could be dusting with icing sugar, it could be drone brood removal, using an open mesh floor, that kind of thing. Also, you might use queen trapping, and we'll come on to some of those methods as we move through into next year. So we're at the point now where we've got a beehive that has been well looked after through the season, and you've got maybe 3 or 4 supers of honey on it, which is all nicely capped, and it's time to remove those supers and extract the honey. And there are lots of different ways in which you can do this. Some require no equipment at all, some require the minimal amount of equipment, and others you could buy lots of expensive equipment and extract using an electrical extractor, and all of the paraphernalia that go with extracting honey. But if you're just starting, you want to try and keep the costs to a minimum maybe, and so it's very simple to extract some honey without having to go to all of that expensive costs. So let's have a look at some of the different methods that you could use to extract the honey without having to purchase lots of expensive equipment. So one of the first things you could do is to simply cut the comb out of the frames and have yourself a fantastic batch of cut comb honey. So that's honey that is kept in the comb, you leave the cappings on it and you store it in small containers and just eat the honey and the wax, and it's one of the most natural, fantastic ways of eating honey that you can possibly have. I only recently started eating cut comb honey, and I have to say it's become one of my favourite ways of eating honey. You get a burst of honey flavours when you crush the wax comb in your mouth, and it's just a fantastic way to eat honey. Another option would simply be to drain the honey. So if you take the supers off the hive and take them into a bee-proof room, so you want to use somewhere that the bees can't access. As we go through next season, we'll put together some more videos of how to extract honey, but there are some videos on our channel that will show you how we've extracted honey this last season. So if you take a frame out of the super, put it over a large bowl and use something like a cold bread knife to simply cut as if you were cutting some bread in a gentle sawing motion, and just gently slice off the wax cappings. That will expose the honey, and then if you suspend that super over a large enough container so that it will hang freely and keep it in a warm room, then over the next 24 to 48 hours the honey will simply drain out of the super frame. You'll still have quite an amount of residual honey left in the frames. You could quite simply just put those frames back in the super and return the super to the hive that you took it from, and then the bees can clean up those frames and they'll restore any honey that you've left for them. Another option would be to cut all of the comb out and to crush it. So you could simply take the frames and cut around the edge of the frame so that the comb and the honey fall out into a bowl, and then simply use your hands to mash up all of the comb so that the honey is released, and then you could suspend that again with some muslin or maybe in a colander or sieve, and simply allow gravity to take its natural course and allow it to drip through. Again, you need to keep it in a warm room so that the honey remains free flowing, otherwise it will start to thicken and then it will be rather difficult for it to filter through either the sieve or the muslin cloth. If you're a member of a local association, you might find that they have either extraction days where you can take your honey in the super to a central location and join in the fun and together extract the honey one super at a time, or your club or association might have some equipment that's for hire or is free to use for individual members. So they might have a small tabletop extractor that you can use, which will maybe take between 2 and 4 frames, and that will help speed up the whole process. And finally, if you wanted to invest in some equipment, then you could buy your own extractor and extracting equipment. I'll put some links up to give you an idea as to the kind of equipment and the price that you're looking at for some of that. Some of it is quite expensive and may be worth waiting until you've sold lots of this season's honey before you reinvest the money into more expensive equipment, but there's certainly a lot of affordable equipment out there that you can use to help you extract your honey. So having extracted your honey and replaced the supers back onto the hives, the bees will then clean down all of the frames and they'll go from being wet and sticky with honey covering them to being spotlessly clean. The bees will clean them up completely and none of that residual honey will be wasted at all. So as we move into August, for me that's the time, if I'm going to use any thymol based treatments for treating the bees for Varroa, it's the month that I would tend to use them after the honey crop. Remember, you can't use the thymol based products when you've got a honey flow on or you've got supers that have still got honey stored in them. So once you've extracted, that's a good time to check for any Varroa and do a count, see whether or not you think you need to treat, and then if you need to treat for Varroa, then it's a good month to be treating. It's still warm enough to be able to get the treatments through the hive, but not so hot that the thymol in particular is going to evaporate so rapidly and not be as effective. We will take a look at all the various treatments as we go through next season, but it's worth just reading up on some of the treatments that are out there. Some of the easiest to use here in the UK, a product called ApiGuard, which is in a gel form, and you can purchase it in small foil containers where you just literally peel the foil off the top and place it above the brood. But there are a lot of different treatments and it's worth just having a look at them and then selecting one that suits you and your beekeeping. If you have any problems, then it's worth talking to a more experienced beekeeper, or if you want to ask questions, please do drop them in the comments section below and I'll answer all of them as best I can. It's obviously quite difficult sometimes because I don't know your specific situation, so I don't know what type of bees you've got, how long you've been keeping them, whereabouts you are, so it can be quite tricky to give you a complete answer, but I'll certainly do my best. And as we move into the late summer and early autumn, you will find, again in the UK certainly, that wasps may become an issue. And wasps generally tend to be a problem for the slightly weaker colonies. Where you've got a very strong colony, certainly what I've found is that I've never had a problem with wasps getting into a really strong colony. It always seems to be the weaker colonies that the wasps target, and for obvious reasons, because if they're not as strong then the entrance might be left unguarded and the wasps can slip in at the side and they'll then start robbing out the hive, and if they find a way in where lots of wasps can get in, then you'll find that they will literally strip that hive of all of its stores, and so it's important to keep an eye on that. And we've got a video showing you how to make some simple traps for wasps, and take a look at that if you think you might have a problem specifically. But I've had wasps in nests very close to our apiaries and they've not bothered the bees at all because the bees have been so strong. So if you've got strong colonies and they're healthy, then I don't think you'll have too many problems with wasps. So something else to consider is to take a look at the state of all of the brood frames that you've got. You might find that as the years pass you'll need to replace some of those, so it's important to try and get that done before we get too far into the autumn months, because you want to allow the bees time to be able to produce the wax, to build up onto the foundation and to produce good comb so that they can either store their winter stores in it or that the queen is able to lay eggs into it. Knowing how unpredictable some of our weather can be, it's important to get that done as soon as possible. And the bees will pull the wax very quickly provided it's warm enough and they've got a flow that they can use to produce wax. If you find that you suddenly don't have a nectar flow, then it's worth, if you're adding extra frames, it's worth giving them some food in the form of sugar syrup so that they can continue to produce wax at a reasonable pace. So what you will find is if the nectar flow or the food source suddenly dries up, they'll only partially draw some of the foundation, and then their wax glands will stop producing an excess of wax, and you'll be left with frames that maybe only have a quarter to a half of the foundation drawn, and that's really not going to be of use to them going into the winter. So that's it for this week. I hope you found that interesting. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and remember to leave any comments or questions you've got down below. I do get to answer all of them, although I have had one or two questions that seem to have slipped through the net recently. They don't always appear in my email inbox, so if you have a question that hasn't been answered, please go to my website and drop me a message via my contact page, and I'll answer any questions that you have through there. But keep popping the comments down below, and I do seem to be getting through to most of them, which is good. And next time we'll take a look at the autumn months and see how we start to prepare the bees for winter. We'll catch up next week. Don't forget, we've got Friday's microscopy videos coming out, and then on Sunday we have the beekeeping basics, big one coming up this Sunday, so watch out for that one, and we'll catch up next time. Thanks for watching.